Hi, everyone at Heart Center Tech. We are at the Heart Center Tech Summit this year. We have some amazing subject expert speakers today talking about financial modernization of CPM for government agencies. We have as the panel host, Ted Ross, the CIO of the City of LA. Very good. Well, Ted, I'm going to be behind the scenes, technically taking care of everything, so the panel is yours. I will chime back in about 25 minutes to let you know and give us a closing and take it away.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Really the first question, of course, COVID has been the big conversation, and really in these uncertain times and these challenging times. And the first question I'm going to direct over to Tony to try to help set the stage, but I'm also going to walk through the group. In these uncertain times, what types of challenges are government agencies facing in their Office of Finance that you've been seeing, Tony?
Yeah, this is definitely a year for the record books, and for a variety of reasons. But the main consistent theme that we're seeing is that budget reductions are normal. It's really a question of how much of a budget reduction you're going to be dealing with in the next indefinite period. And so being able to understand what that looks like, when it's going to recover, how do you manage it in the interim, is all the challenges that we're seeing all the way up from local government even to the federal government. Ridership, people that don't have governments that have trains and rails and sub or buses, they're down like over 50%. Tuition, part of the government's fees and expenses are down 30 to 40% at least, and more in some cases. So that's the biggest issue. And what we're having a lot of conversations with different governments about is a couple things. One, scenario planning, and what I mean by that is what does it look like if in the near future, if I'm trying to understand what my ridership changes, what I think it's going to, maybe better than I think it's going to, or worst case scenario. So you kind of have multiple scenarios that you play out. We've seen this in particular with cash flow and trying to understand exactly all the different revenue streams that a government has. How do they translate that into something that they can actually plan against through forecasting? And in doing that, you kind of have to be faster and more nimble in terms of how you do it. We have one client in the Northeast who, just like most governments, has a 9-month plus or minus, time frame that they use to develop their annual budget. Well, now they're being asked by the legislature and the executive branch to give them 3-month forecasts every 3 months. So they got to take a 9-month process and compress it down into 3 months. That's a challenge. And there's other things we'll talk about later that kind of cover why that's a challenge, but that's certainly something they're trying to solve for. And then one of the more common scenarios that we are addressing is budget reductions. I mentioned that before. If you have the right systems and the right processes in place, you can be more strategic with how you do that versus what I call peanut butter kind of cuts, where you get a memo that says everybody cut your budget by 10%, and it's up to the agencies and the departments to figure out how to do that. There are lots of ways to find money before you get to that level by being more strategic, and then also running different scenarios to see which one you want to play out.
Yeah, Tony, it seems like we can get away with issues when the economy is good. But when things like this are extremely unpredictable, does it require us really to raise our game when it comes to just how organizations are managed?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing. Ironically, even though budgets are reduced, we're extremely busy in our government practice because everybody is realizing that what they had today doesn't work for tomorrow. And so they are upgrading, modernizing systems, changing processes, revisiting the whole transformation of how they do things across the board.
So switching over to your Deloitte colleague, and so Tyler, you were right there. You're in DC, if I remember correctly, right? You're in the DC office, so you're kind of in what we think of as the mecca of federal agencies and government. What are you seeing when it comes to things like scenario planning? What are you seeing as just kind of, I think, an important trend right now during 2020?
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to be nimble, I think, is kind of the key there. There's a lot of unknowns in the future. So being able to get out ahead of that when it comes to planning and budgeting, and being able to utilize a system that's capable of helping you produce those numbers. Like Tony said, you know, taking a 9-month process down to 3 months is no small task. So you know, certainly we're seeing a lot of organizations that are starting to ask those questions.
Randy, switching over to you. So as president of Black Diamond Advisory, you know, you've been consulting and interacting with a lot of different organizations. How has COVID changed things? And maybe specifically, what trends are you seeing when it comes to planning for the future from your perspective?
Yeah, great. And Ted, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So what I've seen from trending in the industry, what I've seen a lot of, like Tony says, the scenario planning clearly. What I've seen specifically around the government and then the EPM space as well is a lot of performance-based budgeting. So a lot of visibility into the KPIs and the metrics, and then how does that increase or decrease budget spending? There's a lot of visibility on those metrics, and being able to put this into a system to look at has been really big. I've also seen a lot of managed by exception and driver-based modeling. Speed is of the essence. So the biggest trend that I'm seeing is how quickly, not only can I put these scenario models together that Tony mentioned, how quickly can I see that in result? Just changing some numbers is one thing, but turning it around and seeing those impacts, not only you know, horizontally down through a P&L, but linear out many, many months. So monthly, quarterly, annually, years out. So I've really seen a focus on that.
Randy, do you see, I could imagine that going into 2020, people had what they thought were their KPIs, but maybe during 2020, maybe they make adjustments. And I think to your point, if they're running scenarios quickly, do you see organizations somehow changing some of those KPIs? Or are they rethinking some of their KPIs during this time frame?
Absolutely, that's an excellent point, and they are. It's the standard ones that were valuable 6 months ago. We'd go in and then say, you know, we see these 5 or 6 KPIs that are critical. That's all we do. Now they're pushing back on us, and we need more KPIs. This kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of that predictive modeling that's hot right now. That's one of the big things that's out there. So the predictive models leverage a lot of those key performance indicators and historical data. So yeah, we're a big push for being innovative around the different KPIs. Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, being someone who just recently had to buy their daughter a car, and the wife is saying, we've got to get all the safety features possible. Not that my daughter's not a good driver, but, you know, we drive in LA roads, and, you know, my wife, of course, wants her to be as safe as possible. It's interesting to see the analogy. The modern cars with all the different safety features of blind, you know, your blind spot monitoring, your lane crossing, your rear crosswalk, all these different warnings and adaptions and automatic emergency braking, et cetera. It seems that cars have done a better job of building the dashboard and the controls to help them organize. Do you kind of see at a high level enterprise performance management as kind of like that car of having more predictors and more information and more of a dashboard to help an organization go?
It is, and it's funny is at first there was a lot of resistance to that. It was like sensory overload. It's we can give you hundreds and hundreds of things, and I don't want that much. You know, I don't want that. I don't want that. It's been a shift of late. It's more. So it does become into that car with all those features. They're able to consume it and use it, and if you organize it correctly, it doesn't matter if there's 100 of them. They like them all. The more, the better, and that hasn't always been the case in the past. It's less is more, which is still true, but it's better to put all those indicators out there and let them kind of teach them what they are, and then they can pick and choose from what they want. So yeah, absolutely, good analogy.
Yeah, the spoiler alert is, of course, because I've got to get all those safety features, I've got to buy her a brand new fancy car. I had to do the same with my other daughter, and it's one of those situations where I'd love to give them that classic first car story of how bad it was, and you simply had to make a drive. But of course, she gets away easy. Now she's got this brand spanking new fancy car that's nicer than mine. Tyler, so question for you. And like I said, you know, being in DC, you have a very probably good and very interesting perspective. What are the opportunities that you're seeing for government agencies as they move forward, and how can they pivot?
Right. Yeah. So I think we've seen, and you know, this has kind of been a trend as of late, as everyone's kind of reassessing where they stand in their budget and planning processes. But a lot of organizations are still running on older systems that, to be honest, are really stretched to their limits as we go through, you know, some of the scenarios that we're seeing this year, especially. So starting to shift more towards, you know, these more robust leading edge software platforms, I think is a really big opportunity for these organizations to kind of take their financial management offices into that next level. You know, certainly in today's day and age, this kind of requires us to be a lot more quicker when it comes to, you know, producing these reports. So we always, you know, strive towards more of a self-serving software platform that allows the users to, you know, be able to produce these things a lot quicker. They're not necessarily relying on IT teams. So really kind of taking that shift back into the business's hands. And all of this really kind of leads to reassessing and you know, potentially reinventing their budget and forecasting processes to help better align with, you know, the times.
Certainly, as someone who runs IT teams, I welcome the constructive use of technology by the business so that they're not reliant on programmers. Generally speaking, have folks been, when they're looking at EPM tools, looking for on-prem, looking for cloud solutions? What has kind of been the trends you've seen?
Yeah, we've certainly seen a lot more.
Sorry, guys. I just wanted to let you know. Hi, Michael.
Hey.
Why don't you say hello? Sorry, you know, I just wanted to make sure you're here in the party.
No, absolutely. I was going to jump in a second, but I wanted to, because I think, Ted, that's a very important question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from what we've seen is, you know, certainly there's a lot of, you know, current on-prem solutions, but everyone's kind of making that move to the cloud and software as a service. So I know, you know, Michael's got a lot of experience in that area and how that benefits organizations.
Yeah, I would say, Ted, from what we're seeing, you know, at the beginning, so we've been on a journey with the government for about 3 years now. And at the beginning, there was kind of a hesitation. Are we, you know, are we ready for the cloud? And literally, you know, in the last year, we're going to the cloud. Every customer that we brought in is going to the cloud. And, you know, for the federal government, it's very important. So as a vendor, we have to go through what they call a FedRAMP process, where our solution gets certified that we're able to use. It's you know, that every government agency is able to use. We have that security, you know, and our company has a FedRAMP moderate certification. And it's funny, I've only heard, you know, FedRAMP questions in the federal government, but as my team that covers the state and local government, they're starting to hear that as a requirement. You know, is your solution FedRAMP certified? So it's great to hear that, you know, some of the local governments are really, you know, starting to take security, you know, seriously. So it's great to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, Tony, I remember you were describing a certain example as we were discussing this one before. Would you mind sharing it with folks?
Yeah, I've got dozens of them, but I'll try to narrow it down here. We have a client in the Northeast that is on a system that was built 25 years ago in Power Builder or RPG or something like that. Very old, and the processes were defined back. I mean, think about that. 1995, cell phones weren't really even that much available at that point, much less, you know, all the digital stuff that we're talking about. So that's when they designed this, and now because of this crunch with the current crisis, they're reinventing the way they do business from the process to the technology side. And we've done the same thing, other state governments in particular, and some cities and counties. The majority of them have systems that are at least a decade old, if not 2 decades old. And so this is just forcing a spotlight on that.
Yeah, you know, in 1995, I remember having a really cool pager. And I think I had Smart Beep, if I remember correctly, $1.99 a month. So that was pretty awesome. I'm not sure that pager could integrate it all into an EPM system still. But next question, real quick for Tony, and then we'll shift over to Michael. what are the trends you're seeing in like the enterprise performance management market when it comes to state and local? And what are they focusing on from like a daily perspective?
Sure. Yeah. We talked a little bit about the cloud, and I think that is in part it's become more adopted now in government, whereas 5-10 years ago it was the exception case. Even at the federal level, it was FedRAMP, as Michael discussed, and then at the state and local level, just the uneasiness with the security and all the other aspects of cloud have really been taken care of to the point now where a lot of vendors are only selling cloud-based solutions, SaaS-based solutions. You can get the on-prem stuff, but you're going to have to really argue for it, and they won't be supported. And so anybody who wants to upgrade is going to almost have to look at that. The other thing which I've seen is a little bit of what I think Randy mentioned around performance-based budgeting. And just to level set, there's many different terms that kind of mean the same thing there. Performance-based budgeting, results-based budgeting, program budgeting, performance-informed budgeting. They're all kind of very much related to each other. And the concept is that you track the expenditures at statewide or citywide programs, and then you have KPIs, as we talked about before, that you use to measure how efficient and effective those programs are. And you have to, and then you have a conversation during the budget reviews or during regular forecast updates to say, okay, these measures didn't move this in a positive direction. Does that mean we need to take money off the table or add more money or cancel the program? Like you have the facts now to have those kind of conversations. And that's a, on the KPI thing, one other thing, we've done this in a couple of different governments. And what we found, number one, most agencies already have some KPIs. I think you guys mentioned that. And most departments have some form of KPIs, but getting to KPIs that everybody can agree with, that are actually relevant to the program and that are accessible. Some stuff is only accessible from the Census Bureau once a year. And if you need to do more frequent, you're going to have to find a different KPI to do that. So that's some of the stuff we've seen there. And then last one I'll add in is agile methods of how you implement. More and more we're seeing everybody ask for that. Now, what they mean by that is a whole different conversation because there's like true agile, which is very much focused on putting out minimum viable products, they call it, on a regular basis throughout the project. But what we've seen a lot, though, in virtually every interaction we're having with government is a request to move towards agile. And I think the benefit for everyone is that agile will give you, value faster. It also lets the user community that's involved in the implementation really have a voice in what's being produced and how it's being produced. They have to be more engaged to make it work. So those are the kind of the big ones I've seen.
Michael, here's a question for you. And before I ask you to discuss the trends, maybe it's just kind of the level setting conversation.
Sure.
How would you define enterprise performance management? Being vice president at OneStream, I think you're the perfect person to answer that question.
Absolutely, and it's a great question because there's a lot of confusion. And the way I like to break it down, it's really all of those processes that are happening in the office of the CFO, right? When we're talking about the financial close and consolidation, producing those consolidated financial statements, all the way through doing the budget formulation, through execution, doing the spend analysis, having that reporting and BI, but also taking it to another level where having predictive analytics play. So any of that stuff that's really happening in that office of the CFO is really what defines CPM.
And so what trends have you been seeing?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest trend, Ted, that I see when we walk into, these major agencies or cities or major states is that, they have a plethora of products and applications, right? So they'll have, we'll ask them what it's like, what does the formulation process look like? If you're talking to a major state or city, they'll have, 8 to 10 different planning applications to formulate. And then they have another 8 to do the execution. And then they'll have multiple applications to do another product and multiple applications to produce financial statements. They'll have another product to do fund balance reconciliation. And so they have these spaghetti charts of just trying to keep those systems in sync. And it's a huge challenge for them. And that's why we created OneStream is, we give, the federal government, the state and local government, the largest, most sophisticated commercial customers, the ability to have everything in a single platform where it's not we called it the CPM 1.0, was what I just described as having a siloed approach, multiple products. By having a single platform where you can do all of these core capabilities. But then, Ted, we take it to the next level, because when you're talking budget formulation and execution, there's a lot of stuff that, that the government really needs to get more transparent on. It's been a big initiative, is really around people planning. And, especially when we talk about state and local governments, being able to, support the impact analysis of like union contract negotiations. I know that is very hard for the planning or budgeteers to manage, especially sometimes we walk in and they're trying to do those, models in Excel. So, really trying to consolidate their applications and products to bring it to a true platform. So you do have a true version of the truth, and you don't have to maintain and manage all of those, applications. Certainly.
Randy, from your perspective, what are the emerging trends? So we've discussed a lot of what organizations, some of the needs they've had, some of what they've been asking for, but what do you see as emerging trends when it comes to EPM?
I mean, Michael just covered the big one that I personally have seen is the platform-based technology. That's key. The siloed approach versus the platform. So why? I mean, Michael touched on it. The siloed solutions are extremely inefficient. So tying back to everything everybody said is the platform-based solution not only gives you one source of the truth, but the speed and efficiency. One of the big goals here is to eliminate inefficiencies in everything we do. And so what Michael's kind of illustrated, and the trend that I see is eliminating inefficiency. This platform-based technology that we have has done that. So that's one of the big trends that I see. Also, a while back there was zero-based budgeting, the buzz around that. It was before zero-based budgeting, it was driver-based, and then everybody wanted to do zero-based budgeting. And when that rolled out, everybody realized that was a lot of work, a lot of effort. Not everybody loves it. Then what I've seen it trend back towards is more managed by exception. So let's drive out everything with these predictive models. Let's drive everything out with our KPIs. Let's put everything out there, and then let's look at the data, manage everything by exception. So everything's out there. Let's just focus on the things that are big hitters. What that does, it allows us to see something immediately. It doesn't bog us down with a tremendous amount of extra work. Zero-based budgeting was a lot of manual effort, and I don't know how much it really gained you. There was accountability as a positive of that, but it was tough. So this managed by exception allows you to focus on the big heavy hitters. I've seen that as a trend come back now, back into the space. The other one I see is the linking of the forecasting, the rolling forecast, the budget, the long range plan, kind of your long periods all interconnected. So in Michael's example, this people planning, if I make a change right now, I can see my impact not only for this year, I can see it next year, and I can see it 5 years from now. And I can see that immediately. And there's a value in that. And I think people really like that. The C-suite loves that. And that's one of the big trends that I've seen. So there's a couple things that I've seen pop up.
Tyler, shifting back to you, there's something you mentioned in a previous answer that I wanted to drill in a little bit further. And it comes to how important is integration when it comes to an EPM conversation. You described that governments are often carrying these legacy systems. They're carrying mainframe systems that maybe performed one function that maybe they were refined to do that. But how important has been integration, and how successful have governments been in integrating into more modernized EPM platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly something that, day one, when you start to implement these, the solutions, it's the very first thing that you start to tackle is understanding how that data is going to flow into your system. What source systems are you able to bring in, and how can we really get that to a unified approach? I mean, getting to a single source of truth where we can bring numbers into a single location, really be able to report on them, and have confidence in that data. So really integration and being able to make sure that we can tap all of these systems and bring that data in and be able to view it in a way that we all have confidence that it's reliable data is extremely important.
Speaking of the way people view the data, here's a question for Micheal. Quite often, finance staff will fall back into Microsoft Excel, right? They've got their spreadsheets. Accountants and finance folks love their spreadsheets.
And never take it away from them.
Well, yeah. How are the EPM reporting tools doing? Have they gotten better? Are they in a place where the people just want an output of the data and they want their spreadsheets, or are they able to get some of these meaningful reports out of EPM directly?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, when we created OneStream, it actually, 100% Microsoft stack. So, it fully integrates with Word, PowerPoint, Excel. There is an add-in to use the Excels, but we took it a step further. OneStream, we actually built in, because we know we're never going to take that spreadsheet-like feeling from the business. So we actually built that into OneStream. So our government customers don't have to worry about managing an add-in. So that's a huge thing. If you use add-ins and the IT team doesn't have to manage that, there's a big relief from them. But yeah, I mean, from a reporting, the best thing I always like to say too is there's a lot of solutions out there that, I always talk about it, and Tyler touched on it, self-service, right? I think it's so important to give the business self-service. And what do we mean by that? When I meet with executives, I'll say, you have a report, you go to your IT team, and your poor IT team is, they have so many other projects that they're working on, but they'll get so many demands for the business because say, hey, I need this report and I need it now. And they'll get the report back, but the person next to them says, hey, I need the same report, but I need to see it this way. And so being able, like we've offered business users to literally have drop downs where they can view the report they want. And the way we kind of do is we have 10 row sets and 10 column sets, and it gives the user basically 100 different views of that report and not having to, rely on IT because, IT gets busy and, when they ask for a report, they may be on an important project they can't get to. And by the time they get to that report and get that report to the business, it's too late to make that decision. And they already made that decision and they don't know if it was an accurate decision to make. So bringing self-service back to the business is ideal.
Yeah, there's no conversation I don't enjoy more than in a system migration where some user group demands 450 different reports in which you realize that you could simply settle it by giving them a couple of variables that they input because they assume that, go ahead, Tony.
I was going to say, I've been at clients that had like thousands of reports and go through a report rationalization process with them, and we end up with thousands of reports. So you kind of have to really, move to the self-service model, move to the ad hoc model to try and get rid of the bulk of those. And in my opinion, reporting is much more a people process problem than it is a technology problem. Most of the technology is there today to kind of help with that.
On that point, and I'm going to ask you a question, Tony. I'm going to open up for any other panelists if they want to answer it. We've spent the last few minutes discussing some of the technologies and some of the capabilities, but what is the importance in this era of good strategy? And what recommendations do you have a client, not just on the technology perspective, but how should they strategize? How should they approach this? So certainly the technology is delivering great capabilities and great performance management capabilities they've never seen before. But what should they do regarding good strategy? Because even the best technology isn't going to make up for bad strategy. So what are your suggestions for organizations today on how to apply good strategy?
Well, most organizations are doing some type of strategic planning. The definition of that is unique to each organization, and the detail and the accuracy and the rigor they put into it is very much unique to every organization. But that strategic planning exercise is a cornerstone. If you're not looking at a long-range plan with all the strategic levers that you need to be able to adjust over time, then you don't have a basis to have the rest of the strategic conversation. And then it has to be tied into everything you're doing on the more frequent basis, such as annual planning and forecasting. How does that take you back to the LRP, long-range plan, and are you still on track with strategy?
Who else would like to tackle that one?
I'll take a piece. Huh? I'll try. Tony answered it so well, I'll just pile on a little bit there. That's strategic plans. So it's what I've seen work is before we even put pen to paper on the technology. Before we even do that, we have expanded we call it architecture and design. So think more of design and strategy. So it's really spending more time that. In the past, it's just give me what you do. We'll put it in there and get it done. We've seen a trend, and what's important is to take a step back, sit down with the business, and really, really discuss what they want out of the system and what they want out of they're trying to do. So focus on the beginning before you even put pen to paper on the technology. I think that's a big key. Now, Tony's right. Yeah, all these levers and everything, defining the levers, why we're picking that levers. What have we seen? Let's really talk about it and lay it out, and then get into building out something that'll help you. So the only thing that I've really kind of shifted over the last couple of years is that's always been important, but it's even more so now.
Yeah, it's really interesting how the year 2020 exposes weaknesses, right? And so it could be weaknesses in your digital services. It could be weaknesses in your financial planning. If there's a weakness, it will be exposed. It could be weakness in the unity and maybe kind of the culture of your organizations, or in your inability or ability to remote work. So, with that, I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to shift to kind of one final question, which is the non-topical question. It's topical based on like the keynote. And I'm going to start with Tyler. And the question for you is, how would you define the city of the future, Tyler?
Well, outside of the finance realm, I think the city of the future, living in DC, I'm sure you can appreciate this living in LA. I think one of the key features I would like to see in the city of the future is traffic free. I mean, somehow there has to be a way that we can connect all of these roads and get people to and from work efficiently. I think certainly with emerging technology, maybe not with the upcoming budget cuts, but finding a way to really connect the grid. And it's funny, when I saw this question, I definitely thought of me and my dad when I was a kid. We watched a documentary about engineers that build the roads and the road systems and how they all work. It seems easy, but it's when they explain it, it's very complex. But it's definitely something outside of the potholes, which probably would be step one, is fix all of those, and then let's get to some more efficient traffic patterns so we can get to work easier, if that still is an option in the future.
Okay, going from DC to Texas, Tony, how do you see the city of the future?
Okay. Well, we actually put out a trend every year of what are the top trends in government, and we've touched on a lot of them here, but I'll just tick off a few there. The smart city is a little bit what Tyler was describing, and that involves the Internet of Things, all these billions or millions of devices that are all available now to track information and provide it back to you. And the issue that creates is big data and analytics. What am I going to do with all this information, and how do I look at it in a timely fashion and respond to it? And so those are kind of all core to the smart city approach. And I know, I think I saw LA is also looking at how they do LED lights to try and have them wireless and have more efficiency, green. And so I think that's also a trend. One of the other things we mentioned earlier, and I think Randy talked about this, was kind of in the EPM trends, there's a lot of digital components that are coming out. And by digital, we mean, we talked about predictive analytics, got artificial intelligence, robotics, blockchain, not quite fully adopted yet, but it's part of that conversation, right? Well, there's a whole nother realm to that, which is what are the digital ethics, right? What is the data and the AI type ethics that I need to enforce so that citizens are safe? Right, and you think about, I know people who don't want to have an Alexa in their house because they're afraid that Amazon or somebody's listening to everything they say.
They are.
Yeah, possibly. Google searches, same thing. So you kind of, so the ethics thing is real, and it's being absolutely intensified because of the move to digital.
Very good point. In fact, at the City of Los Angeles, we've actually drafted a digital code of ethics. It's 40 plus pages, and it'll probably be released in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And so for those who saw kind of the keynote, fundamentally, I took a quote directly out of our digital code of ethics and put in the keynote, in which we said it's not just about innovative technology, it's about ethical technology. Randy, what's your take? City of the future, approach it any way you'd like.
Yeah, all right. And they are listening. I'm telling you, when I mention I'm out of cereal and it shows up on my Facebook feed, I swear they're listening to me. It's going. I don't know what's going on. No, my city of the future. I think that connecting the people is key. Some of the initiatives I've seen out there are things like Block Pool. I think Singapore did that, where you share things across. The neighbors can share things, or the wheel mapping. You know, where you've got Google Maps and it takes you how long to walk from here to here, but you know, what's wheelchair accessible, you know, having the ability to connect technology and people and make the community tighter. I think that's kind of where my head's at. I thought that was a neat thing for the city of future. It's not just what you see now, it's being innovative and creative on what we don't know now.
Micheal, city of the future, and any closing thoughts on EPM for the audience?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the city of the future, it's something that I've been dying to see, and it's not even just for the city, it's for the federal government. I think government as a whole, and that unifying the actuals team and the budget team, that they're not enemies. It was like that in the commercial world for a long time. They didn't, want to share anything, but we've seen it on the commercial side is that they've come together, they've united, and with that happening, results are much clearer and better and quicker. And if we can have that happen on the government side, I think, from a CPM perspective, it's going to be a game changer for a lot of agencies. So, but with Tony talking about analytics, I think that's a huge thing. We have all of this data. What are we going to do with it? We're working on the background with some, a lot of predictive analytics, predictive modeling. I think we're going to see a lot of that stuff coming out more into play into the government space. So it's an exciting time to be part of it. And technology changes so quick. So, we'll see what the next trend is going to be.
Ted, I would add, there's also the people side of this to consider in terms of the city of the future. Innovation, and how do you incubate that? How do you encourage that? How do you create an environment where that becomes the norm instead of the exception? And so that, and then also just the human-centered design is what we call it, but essentially treating the client as, or the citizens as customers, and organizing the way information is done for them in a way that is efficient. I've been on websites. Well, I get some stuff on our own internal website where it says, hey, this is Steve, and we are trying to help you schedule the training that's due in a week. You mind if we pick something on your calendar? That's a bot. It's a chat bot that our company has developed to do that kind of stuff. And they give them actual names so that it's not scary. This is not robot 123. This is Steve. And so that's that. But the human component of that, and the irony is this: if you want to get more innovative people, you have to have innovative strategies and technologies, or those people will go somewhere else. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg scenario.
You have to be open to change.
Great, excellent. On that note, Tyler, Tony, Randy, Micheal, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for sharing your expertise, giving us insight onto this. And with that, I'm going to hand it on back to Jude.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Ed, and thanks, guys, everyone, for participating in financial modernization today. It was incredibly educational, and thank you for all of your knowledge and wisdom. Feel free to come back in about an hour and 20 minutes. We launched National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Lisa Lapointe from Terra Nova Securities is going to be on board, and she's going to talk about the latest in education for cyber awareness. So we'll talk to you and see you in a little bit. Ted, I'll see you then to pick things up, and we'll take it from there. Have a wonderful day, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.